panel. We're going to move into questions. The kitchen did ask me to remind everyone that there is still food left. If anyone is still hungry, feel free. Help yourself to it. I see our chairman of the Story County Republicans, Jim Hindle, is snuck into the back. Sorry to give you that bad news about the school funding, Jim. Thanks for coming down to Douglas. I was going to move first into the questions on AB 95, but the Senator answered some of them already. And so let's move first to a question for Kathy Lewis. If you can pass her the microphone. And then we'll return back to the AB 95 once I figure out what's already been asked and answered. So, Kathy, the question is anything being done about voter fraud? If so, what's being done? If not, why not? And then, as a follow-up, how is same-day voting going to impact the voting process?
Great, thank you. For that question, hopefully I can answer it. Voter fraud, I assume voter registration fraud or voter fraud in the vote?
It is not specified in the question.
I will talk about voter registration fraud. So our registration, our voter registration, we perform monthly maintenance on that, and so we will always bounce it up against other counties' voter rolls up to the state, and then the state is involved in a group called ERIC. It's a multi-state organization. The states voluntarily do join this. Nevada, I think, was one of the first ones to join that. California is not part of that, but a lot of other states are. So we will perform voter maintenance. We are always looking for, if voters come into us and have concerns, we're happy to address that. I will tell you, for automatic voter registration, we're invited to be part of the working group at the state. The state put together a working group with the Secretary of State's office, the governor's office, DMV, and some counties to work through the provisions of automatic voter registration. And so we are actively working on how we can take the information from DMV and ensure that only people who are allowed to vote, that information is passed to the counties. And so we are actively working on that.
Thank you very much. I will say on the voter fraud itself, the voter fraud at the ballot box, one of the hardest things about that, and something that makes it very difficult for any of our county people to keep track of, is that we don't have voter ID. And until we know who's voting, it's very hard to say if the wrong people have voted. I want to give a shout out to Sean Meehan down here in the front. He put together a report for the state party on how we can move forward with a ballot initiative to get voter ID in this state, because we don't believe that that's going to happen unless the people do it. So thank you, Sean, for putting that together. We'll be moving forward on that to get that out there and as an initiative petition so that we can get that, and then our counties can actually work on that. Anything further, Kathy?
I will just answer quickly about same-day voter registration. We do expect big changes. Like I said, we are working in the next year. We have about a year until the primary election for 2020. So we are actively working. I know there are a lot of concerns. I've been listening and reading whenever I can. I will tell you, my number one priority is always the integrity of the election in Douglas County, regardless of what's passed or not passed. That is my goal. So we will be working on those provisions, working on policies and procedures, what we can do to ensure the integrity of the elections in Douglas.
As we go through these questions, it's an open discussion among the panel, and I know some things cross different areas, and so if somebody else wants to jump in on something, and
on the voting question, as Kathy said, the state of Nevada, through the Secretary of State, entered into the ERIC program, Electronic Registration Information Center, I believe is the acronym for it. It is a combination of 26 states where they actually show their voting files and make sure that James Settlemyer, born on March 6th, isn't actually voting in 2 states. But unfortunately, as she said, California is not part of that system. Imagine that. As a matter of fact, of the 26 states that are part of it, only one is a Democrat Secretary of State. But the Secretary of State in Nevada does a good job of trying to bounce everything off of several files. One of them being the Social Security Death Index, to make sure that people that have died are no longer voting. I know it's a crazy concept. And I served on the elections task force for Secretary of State's Gasky, and they did a phenomenal job. And Douglas County has always been one of the prime examples of what to be. And so I have to appreciate and thank Kathy Lewis for what she's done. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that your commission is looking into this a little bit. In 2020, all licenses have to have real ID. So we're asking the district attorney's office to look into that and see if we can, as a county, require real ID for voting. Since it's required by the state, I don't know why we can't require it down here.
All right, let's move back to the senator and try and catch some of the detailed questions on.
Just one other thing on voting, just so you know, their own county clerk Joe Gloria in Clark County says that now after the election it's going to take 11 days to get your results because of same-day voter. So you'll have to wait 11 days to see what the actual results are.
That is correct, because every ballot that's cast by a voter to register same day is a provisional ballot, and they have 10 days to count those. A number of our elections here in Nevada are fairly close, so we'll probably be using that 10 days. All right. Any other panelists on that question? Kathy, do you have a follow-up?
I will say, definitely a concern when we were going through AB 345 was the 10 days. But my intention is hopefully on election night, when you see those results, you'll know how many voters have voted and how many more we anticipate, how many provisional ballots were cast. And so when you can look, especially, I think the state results will be harder because they are closer races, but the local results, you will be able to see how many votes have been cast and how many provisionals we are still waiting on, so you can make those decisions. But it is after the fact. You're right.
Once you have your job done, maybe we can send you down to Clark County to show them how to do it.
No, don't apply.
So Senator, on AB 95, you covered already the questions on the Supreme Court case and what the situation is with that. We had some questions on the status of the meters, if anybody is going to be forced to do that, if it's going to be a cost. Can you address anything about that in the process?
AB 95 is, like I said, the concept of whether or not your water rights are a property right or whether there are what's called a will serve certificate, which is the way the state of Nevada viewed it until a judge said no, they're a property right. That is currently been appealed to the state Supreme Court, so we're going to have to wait and see what they say on that particular point. As far as the concept of the meters, again, in only critical management areas will the state engineer be able to order the implementation of meters in those critical management areas. At that point, again, 250% over appropriated. That currently is only Nye County. With that being said, I sure don't want to go knock on somebody's door in Nye County and say, "Hi, I'm here from the government to put a meter on your well." That's not going to go well. That's probably maybe the reason they want to take somebody's guns away first. That being said, what the state engineer will have the ability to decide at his discretion is to only do it on new builds, i.e. new homes that are built require meters from that point going forward, or he could go retroactive. That's going to be a decision by the state water engineer, and that's why that position is so critical. I was happy that we didn't see any changes to the resume of the state engineer. Currently, they have to have a degree in hydrology. They wanted to change that so they could just be an attorney. Luckily, we were able to, through enough resistance of individuals, to thwart that idea, to say the least, because that would have been very problematic.
James can be a little diplomatic sometimes, and as you all know, I'm not very. But what that means is that an unelected bureaucrat will be able to come and tell you whether you have to pay to put a well on your property, and then cut you back from 2 acre-feet to an acre-foot, and make sure the state has the other 75% to give to somebody else. So it's only a critical management area, and we are not there at this point in Douglas, but you never know what's going to happen. We are a drought state, and I just can't see an unelected bureaucrat telling you what to do.
There is one other law, though, that I think is important that I got passed out. It was one of mine. We've had an issue for quite a while where certain counties they would require a developer to dedicate 2 acre-feet of water for every home they did. So let's say they built 20 homes. That means they have to come up with 40 acre-feet of water to dedicate to the county. Well, the counties then would say, well, we only need 1 to serve them. Let's sell the other 20 to another developer. And literally, they were allowed to do that under Nevada law. So we were able to pass a bill last session, even with the Democrats in charge, saying, no, no more. Once the water is dedicated, it needs to stay with that land for perpetuity and not sold off to yet another developer or another home. That's ridiculous.
Any other panelists on that particular question? And the last thing on AB 95, there was a question as to whether or not the state water engineer is indeed all-powerful, and if he is the only authority on making those decisions if we ever get to that over-appropriation, and is there an ability to make legal challenges to that if he does put something through?
There's always the ability to file a lawsuit, whether or not you win is another decision. That being said, yes, from my reading of the bill, it gives the state engineer supreme powers, and it's a scary thought. The state engineer already has a lot of power. Just so you know, I have meters in all my wells because everybody in agriculture has to. The state engineer also has the right to go to the Douglas County assessor and state, I need a couple $100,000 more for lawsuits because, you know, these guys in Douglas County are going to sue me. So he goes to come to me because I own primary water rights to make me pay that bill. Just unilaterally. He doesn't have to go to the governor, doesn't have to ask anybody's permission. He has a unilateral right to go to the Douglas County clerk and demand that he collect money from people that have primary water rights. It's absolutely crazy. We thought about trying to bring that subject up, but we were pretty sure we wouldn't like the results. They may actually, we're not sure they really know it. So please edit that part of the tape and don't tell anybody else he has that part.
All right. Anything else from any panelists on the water bills? I think we've covered what was asked from the audience. Let's return next to the gun bills. We were asked what effect the latest gun bill would have on binary triggers. I know that initially that gun bill started with bump stocks, and as it was amended at the very end, it included a number of modifications, so I don't know if the sheriff or Mr. Nelson have any information on that.
I don't know the exact verbiage or what Senator Stellmeyer will comment on that. But binary triggers are similar to bump stops in they affect the rate of fire of the weapon. And so, but the issue is, in my opinion, is it's just a creep onto the Second Amendment. And so that's how they start. And we can argue whether or not you know, those things are necessary, or if they do actually increase the rate of fire and so on and so forth. But they do not change the fire mechanism of the weapon. And so it doesn't make it from semi-auto to full auto. It may enhance or increase your ability to shoot a little faster, but it doesn't change the weapon in the sense of making it full auto. And so it's kind of a misnomer. It's a lot of hype over or not much. And I'll let Senator Stellmeyer comment.
I'm trying to scan the changes real quick. I'm going to let Jim take it for a second, because the main thing I'm seeing that really changed in that bill was the red flags and also the gun storage. So let me take a look.
Yeah, the way I remember the bill was any trigger modification. Now, I've got a LC9 that I bought for a lady I know, and the thing had about a 3.5 mile trigger pull on it. And it's a 2-inch gun, so it's pretty hard to do. But we went to the range, and she was pulling the trigger, and she said, "When is this thing going to fire?" And finally, when it got to the bottom, it fired. So I took it in the next day, and they actually modified the trigger for me, and now it's a pretty good gun, and it is now an illegal weapon. Sorry, Sheriff, you don't know that. Yeah. Also, the other part of that bill that got added in was the storage part, where guns may be properly stored. I don't know about you guys, but I keep a gun on my nightstand. Right? And, oh, sorry, Sheriff, you want But that's actually illegal now if someone under 18 years old happens to be in my house. Can't have that. Now, I know that when I went to high school, and I went to high school in LA County, I had a gun on the gun rack in the back of my 78 Chevy pickup. And I went to go duck hunting one night. I was going to go after school, and the window wouldn't roll up. It was a 78 Chevy pickup. The window wouldn't roll up, so I took the gun out and put it in my locker. And when I walked out of school that night with the gun hanging over my shoulder, the principal stopped me and goes, "Weeder, what do you got?" I says, a Browning? He goes, no, you need a Remington. Come here, look at this. So, those days are gone. Those days are gone. Now, there is no respect for the weapon anymore, and there is no respect for life anymore in some of these people. And that's what has to change, and that's what I love about Douglas County.
AB 291 has many aspects to it. One, there's the red flag provision, so that basically it's sort of your due process. If someone just accuses you of having a gun, it creates a situation where they have to come in and take your gun from you, which is insane. It has a trigger modification in section 25. It also took the blood alcohol control level, which doesn't bother me, down from 0.1 to 0.08. If you have a concealed carry weapons permit, you're already under that anyways. If you also have a commercial driver's license, you're at that level anyways. The last part of it, the storage aspect, if you know or reasonably know that an 18-year-old may be around, then you have to secure your firearms in such a way that they can't, so a lockbox, which basically makes it ineffective if you actually want to protect yourself. In that respect, if you send me a text, like I said earlier, 474747 GOP, I can get back in touch with you, but if you go home and look up AB 291, you can see all the changes. Of course, again, I'm hoping that the NRA or some gun rights group stand up for the Constitution and say no.
Any other panelists with input on that bill? Then let's move on to one on the education funding. The question is, can you explain how the education funding is moving from the rural to Clark County? I know you guys touched on your initial statements, but I think there's some additional questions about the detail. You've got the mic.
Yeah, that was SB 543. It was sprung on us 2 weeks before the end of the session. We didn't get to see it until 2 weeks before the end of the session. And it is the single largest expense in the state, over $4 billion, for the biennium. And after they went and explained it to some of their supporters, they came in and showed the Republicans, which I thought was just rude. But we asked, we looked at it, and to put it simply, all the ad valorem tax, et cetera, that you pay now, that the county ends up paying to the schools, will go into a single pot controlled by the legislature, and then that will be distributed to the schools. So it is what they call a 10-year plan. And all the money that is going in right now to the schools, from Douglas County, for instance, will come back to Douglas County. But even if we get more and more children in our schools, our enrollment goes up, we will no longer get the per pupil part of that. What we will get is the same amount. So if we add another 100 kids in school in the next school year, you're going to get the same amount that you had last school year. And that is a 10-year plan for them to achieve what they call parity. Okay? So in other words, every child in every school is paid the same amount, basically. Well, that doesn't actually sound that bad, right? But how many kids in Clark County or in Washoe County have to travel 60 miles to get to school? How many kids there have to, in Clark County, have to have the heat because there's 4 feet of snow outside? How many of these kids, don't have a huge classroom where the money is distributed, it costs more to teach 3 kids than it does to teach 30, because your overhead is the same. So the old funding formula, what they called the Nevada plan from, I believe it started in 1964, had it so that there were incentives in some of the smaller counties because they realized it cost more. The new plan says we don't care if it costs you more, we're taking your money. Now you might think, okay, well that's fine, here's what we'll do. We'll raise a sales tax or something, and we'll put money into our school. No, you're not allowed to do that. To an extent. Part of the bill did say that the counties can raise, that was AB 309 that did this. The counties can raise the sales tax to help for schools. But what the bill actually says is that money, up to 50% of it, may go to education. Doesn't say must. That's not how the press reported it. I'm sure you'll find that shocking. But yeah, it may go to. So anyway, that's my take on that bill. I think it is very bad for the rurals. I do believe there will be lawsuits on it. I think they did change the part in the last amendment where the net proceeds of money does come back to the individual county.
They did modify that in the last thing. The state of Nevada, we had a $9 billion budget. We spent $5 billion, okay, $5 billion on education. With that being said, that's $4.4 billion by the state and local, and then we have about 319 from federal grants that are usually about 75% federal and 25% match. But again, the bulk of the state budget has always been and always will be education. The plan that was passed will take the local property tax that is allocated to the schools that are not dedicated to local capital improvement projects, and it pools that with the local school support tax, the LSST, which is the sales tax portion, into one account to distribute back to counties on a student basis by using the 2019 as the base year. And then they're going to create what they call a general fund maintenance of effort. We call it a freeze and squeeze. They're going to limit that amount of money to those counties, and it doesn't get to change unless you have increased numbers, which in Douglas County we have decreasing school attendance numbers, not increasing. So that means our number will go down. We also will have a factor for the Western Consumer Price Index, which last year was 3%. So they'll give us an increase based on that. Well, I'm judging by the number of things we did in the legislative building, it's not going to do well for the West. Because now that you have Nevada and California driving the Western Consumer Price Index, I believe it's going to start to fall. That's my opinion. With that though, the individual counties that are hit are very problematic. Like we said, Churchill, $119,000 hit. Douglas County, $8.3 million. I also represent Lyon County, $1.7 million. And Story County, $1.5 million for 153 students. It's absolutely wrong what they have done. It also creates a disincentive to allow anything to occur within your county. Because now, like I said, anytime you see an increase in property taxes because you did something good, you brought a new business to town, or you did something smart to try to generate the economy and generate money for your local community, now those shifts go to Clark County. So in their budget funding, they're looking to go up by 20, within that 10-year plan, they're going to go up by 258. The reason that occurs, they also snuck a provision in there that automatically states any increase in the revenue to the state of Nevada, any budgetary increases, there's a portion of that automatically goes through the school account. Automatic. No matter what happens, they get an increase. So that means added to the other factors we discussed, they're going to be looking for money next session, something fierce. And again, that's probably why they wanted to violate the Constitution now, to set it up to be easier next time.
Do we have any teachers in the audience? Any? Hey, I just want to say thank you. How many times have you taken money out of your own paycheck just to make sure some of the kids in your class have more? You know, we really appreciate that. And, you know, this has been a tough session for the teachers, but just know we got your back. All our Republican state senators and assemblies and the state party, you know, we're here for you. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Any other panelists with input on the school funding?
Josh had a good point. What we did for education for the teachers that we did approve of is we made it so that their reimbursement rate, I think it's $150 now, can actually go up to $250 to try to reimburse teachers that are going out and paying out of their own pocket for their students. So we're happy to do that. And even the concept of giving teachers a 5% pay raise, I was in favor of that. That didn't bother me. We had the money. Matter of fact, we still have money. And looking at the final fiscal analysis from the Nevada Legislature, when it was all said and done, beyond the 5% we're required to have as a base funding, you know, for cushion, we still have over $100 million extra. Gee, guess we didn't need that $98 million tax increase anyway.
We also tried to put in a separate account within the DSA that would be strictly for teacher pay, and the bill wouldn't even get a hearing. That way, if someone said we're going to give teachers a 3% raise, it went to the teachers, which is what we were trying to get across. We wanted to make sure the teachers got that raise that was promised them, and it wasn't watered down by the time it got to them. And That bill, that was a bill that I put in that never got a hearing.
How many bills did you put in that didn't get a hearing?
More than one. The best one that I put in that didn't get a hearing, talking about teaching, is that I put in a bill that would require the teaching of the Constitution and the teaching of the federal law. You may be really surprised to find out it didn't get a hearing.
All right, next question. Senator Settlemyre said that he would file a lawsuit against having the business tax extended and not sunset. Is that still the plan? Any information on that?
The lawsuit's still coming. We're working with legal counsel right now to figure out, there's 3 different lawsuits that can happen. One, the Senate Republicans can bring a lawsuit. That's our plan. Business community on behalf of the payroll tax, they can bring a lawsuit. Everybody in this room who may do the transaction with DMV, you could also bring a lawsuit. So in that respect, it's up to various people to figure out which direction they want to go. The Senate Republicans, we are working on it right now. It's one of those situations we're also working with national organizations because, again, they've had a lot more experience at doing this in states that have violated their own provisions of restraint initiatives, tax restraint initiatives. So it's coming. It's just in the final stages of trying to figure it out right now.
Thank you very much. This one may get into our county commissioners a little bit. We'll see. What effect will raising the minimum wage have on business in this state? Just as background, we saw a bill passed to raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour. That is already in effect. And there's another bill, a constitutional amendment, that will put into the Constitution that information and require by Constitution that we are at $12 an hour by the 2024, I believe, is the date in the bill. So any idea what that might have to do with our economy here in Douglas County?
Economics 101. Cost of everything's going to go up. That's the bottom line.
One of the things that concerns me is automation. When McDonald's can automate how you buy a hamburger, that's going to put somebody out of a job. And robots don't have great demands when it comes to salary.
Yeah, when it comes to automation, I saw a bill that would require automated machines to pay into unemployment benefits. I'm not sure where that bill went, but maybe I missed some. That bill didn't go anywhere. But I do think it raises the question of automation and minimum wage and how all that stuff applies.
When I was a kid, and when most of you were kids, think back, it happened. We were happy to get minimum wage because that's what we used to buy gasoline so that we could take our day to the prom. We did not try to raise a family on minimum wage. Minimum wage was not designed for raising families. Minimum wage was designed as a stopgap or a way for teenagers to make some extra money while they're between summer school and if those that didn't pay attention in regular school and getting on to the next grade level. And too many people have the assumption that people should be able to raise a family and live well on minimum wage. And that's just not what it's all about.
You also heard the chairman say that there was also a bill that went through to put it in the Constitution, raising minimum wage. Well, we just passed a bill that's going to raise minimum wage, so why do we need it in the Constitution? Well, let me tell you. That drives Democrat voters to the polls. That's why they're coming out with the constitutional amendment, because it's not going to do much different than the laws they already just passed. So if you ever think about some of the bills that get passed and why they get passed, what we saw in this session a lot was how are we going to be able to hold on to power and make sure the Republicans never have power again in this state.
The aspect of the minimum wage, there was discussions from the get-go about doing a tip credit on it. That was rejected. There was a discussion of overtime. We're one of only 5 states that has an archaic overtime rule. All those states have gone to a 40-hour work week. In the state of Nevada, if you were making below $12 an hour currently, and between the minimum wage of $8.25 and $12, if you go over an 8-hour period, in a 24-hour day, you have to get time and a half. And there's many employees who have indicated, listen, my kid's sick, can I go run and take my kid home? I'll come back and I'll work 2 extra hours. No. Then I have to pay you overtime. Well, I'm just making up the 8 hours. It doesn't matter. Nevada law is archaic that way. Of course, there's an exemption to it if you're a union. So in that respect, the concept of minimum wage in the state of Nevada is a union organization tool. And that's what is used for. If you're part of a union, they can actually pay you less than the minimum wage. So to me, that's what this was about, and as Mr. Wheeler indicated, to drive it to the polls. But also, there is some questions of whether or not you can actually raise the minimum wage since it's in the Constitution through a state law. And I think they were fearful of that, and we're looking at a second way to do it, just in case they were proven to be yet unconstitutional on a different bill.
Pass that down to Josh, please.
Yeah, you know, I followed the minimum wage bill a lot, and, you know, I was listening to Assemblyman Howard Watts, who is a big proponent of it. You know, he's like, I just want to put bucks back in people's pockets. And, you know, what I wanted to ask is, well, what happens when people lose hours because, you know, small businesses and rural, you know, counties can't afford to pay the minimum wage? You know, what about that? What about when the minimum wage is so high that the best option is to automate and cut those jobs? How is that putting bucks back in people's pockets? You know, and these are the kind of conversations I think we need to have with people. So, thank you.
All right, next question is, are we a sanctuary state? What are our options to avoid accepting illegal aliens and avoid paying free medical and education for them? I think we touched on that a little earlier, but you guys have any input?
I'm not sure exactly what the question means, but no, we are not a sanctuary state. And there was a bill that went through, or partially through, the Assembly went through committee and made it to the floor to make us basically a sanctuary state. And it died on the desk, as they call it. It got put on the desk. And I think part of that was that they you know, again, back to the elections, that they knew if that bill had gone through that we would have won a lot of seats in the next session. So, as a matter of fact, both Mr. Settlemeyer and I made sure the governor knew that we would win a lot of seats back up this bill.
Let's make sure that we win a lot of seats anyway.
Yeah, Sanctuary State Bill AB 281, you know, I read it, and, you know, it's like, you know, it threw a lot of red flags on me, but the power of how we organized that and got the earned media, you can go back and watch earned media clips where Assemblyman Edgar Flores says, you know, I don't want people being arrested and the improbable cause is that they're undocumented. He's trying to codify, I think, kind of bad practice and maybe puts limitations on law enforcement. Maybe the sheriff can comment on that.
So when Wilbur Ernesto Martinez Guzman was arrested for the homicides, the first charge that he had, which enabled us to take him into custody, was an immigration violation. We worked with ICE. So that's what he was originally booked into the Carson City Jail on before we went forward and charged him with homicide and the burglaries. If you're booked into the Douglas County Jail through our booking process, if we determine or believe that you are here illegally, regardless of what country that you immigrated from or came from, then we contact ICE and let them know, and then they tell us whether or not they're going to hold them. Currently in our jail, we have about 8 individuals that are currently on ICE holds, and so as soon as their cases are adjudicated and they've done their time, with us, then immigration will come and pick them up and send them back to where they came from.
I just want to let you know we actually are a sanctuary county. Don't let the sheriff fool you. We're a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, thanks to these guys up here.
You just holding the mic, babe?
No, I handed it to him.
That's the hot potato. Kathy, one more for you. How will you avoid double voting by absentee and same-day voting? What kind of a system is there to cross-reference? And I guess that really goes to just same-day, absentee, and regular day of. I'm sure you have systems in place for that.
So the provision in AB 345 is to, if someone comes in same-day registration, is to have them vote a provisional ballot. Provisional ballots we've had in law, it is when we can't verify that if you're eligible to vote, we'll offer you a provisional ballot, and then you have a week after that to prove to us that you are allowed to vote. If there's something that happened, a mix-up with the DMV or whatever, you're able to take that time. We don't have a lot of provisionals counted, but we do offer a provisional ballot. We are working with the state and the other counties right now, so it might change the actual process, but my vision is that anybody who comes in to register same day and votes, they'll vote a provisional ballot, and then after the election, we'll send those names to the state, and the state will get all the counties' names, including Washoe and Clark and Carson City, all the counties, bounce it up against each other, and then we'll determine that they haven't voted somewhere else, they haven't voted twice, and then we'll be able to count that ballot. As far as within Douglas County, our registration system is real time. So if someone does, and it does happen, someone asks for an absentee ballot, and then they'll decide, oh, I want to go in, I'm in town, I'll go in and vote anyway. Our system is real time. So as soon as we count that absentee ballot, if they try to come in and vote, we're like, well, we already got your absentee ballot, you can't vote. Or if you come in to vote, we'll take that absentee ballot or have you sign an affirmation that says you will not send that in and you can vote. But we monitor that real time within the county, from county to county will be after the election.
Thank you, Kathy. The next question may require a little bit of background for people that are may have been newer to the state or not realized how we did things before. The question is it possible to return to one senator per county?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Appreciate the question. In the Nevada Constitution, it used to be that way. Unfortunately, it was challenged in the court of law, one man, one vote. And it was rejected, it was overturned, the concept of having one senator per county. Now, no one appealed that to the United States Supreme Court. I wish they would have. That being said, I doubt there's going to be the ability, unless somebody wants to file a lawsuit, somehow appeal that up the situation in order to get it. Within the Nevada Constitution, we're not allowed to carve ourselves in a new state. Because we came in during the Civil War, we had provisions that were put in there that we don't have that right. So you'd have to go through Congress to get it, getting to vote of the people. Again, you'd have to go to Congress, or maybe a president, because the president does have a right to declare a new state just unilaterally. That being said, no, I don't see that one being overturned in any way, shape, or form. I think it's important, though, to remind everybody, we have to do our best to remember that we need to make this a place where people want to move to, not a place people want to move from. And that's what we have to keep in mind in the next elections, and making sure we put people in there that will maintain this as a place that we all want to move to. We all came from somewhere else. My great-grandfather came here from Germany. Of course, he was actually a draft dog, just so you know. Kaiser had this crazy idea. He thought it was great to send 12-year-olds off to war. So when he had 11 and a half, he was put on a boat and shipped to America. So yeah, he was a draft dog. 2 years later, he was sent for his older fiance. She was 13. That being said, times were a little different back then. But we have to make sure this is where we want to move to. Because tell you what, this is where I want to live the rest of my life. This is where I want my kids to live the rest of their lives. Hopefully, it doesn't change to the point where we all want to move somewhere else.
I said in testimony at least a couple of times this year before various hearings that I felt like they say that we are represented in Senate and Assembly. They read that before every bill. and I don't feel like I was represented in Senate and Assembly, even though we had some stupendous representatives. They were outnumbered by Clark County. That school funding bill passed not on a Democrat-Republican line, but on an urban versus rural line.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Clark County has a lot of control. We're going to work very hard on turning some of those seats in Clark County back our way. But in the meantime, thanks to these guys for everything that they do fighting against huge, huge odds. I have kind of a general question, and I'm not sure where it goes, but why aren't the Republicans as motivated as the Democrats?
You talking about this county?
The issue that you run across within, I think it gets to the question of Republicans tend to vote what we think. One of the greatest aspects of being a Republican is we do what we think is best for our communities. We have our own minds, we make up our own decisions, and we're not gregarious sheep who just do what we're told. One of the worst problems about being a Republican is we're individually minded, we're not gregarious, and we don't do what we're told. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that respect when I look at it. As far as being organized, they have a lot more time in their hands, it seems. They have 7 to 8 to 12 organizations out there to help organize, get people to the ballot box, push their issues. You have Nevada Current, even Nevada Indy. You have so many different news organizations that are all liberal. And it's not easy to find one that's conservative that focuses just on the state of Nevada. In that respect, they're a little bit better at making sure that their organizations are funded. However, generally, Republicans can outwork them any day of the week. It's just one of the things that we do well. And even the rural counties, I'm sorry, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, anything. If you look at this school funding, and you're looking at the party in power, I don't care what party you are, this is not right. Taking $8 million away from Douglas students, $1.5 million from Story County, I don't care what party you are, that's not right. And I hope everybody gets their comeuppance in the next election, and then we can try to change it back.
I alluded to this a little earlier too, because we've seen it now through many sessions, is that when I think it was either Franklin or Jefferson, someone said that, Sean was for sure, we're in big trouble when you can vote, that people find out they can vote themselves a piece of the treasury. And the unions have found out, and some of the liberal organizations have found out that they can vote themselves a piece of the treasury. So when you're paying, of that $500 million that we're going to spend extra to unionize our state employees, probably $100 million of that or so will go directly to the union dues and then fees and everything else. And they will put their people on the street to vote for the Democrats who gave them that money, to go out and knock on doors, to put out advertisements, mailers, etc. They'll spend that money that is your money to vote against you. And so when they find out that they have a piece of the treasury, or when they find out that they can vote themselves a piece of the treasury, which they've already done, that's the biggest problem we have. So, for instance, Planned Parenthood, they only support liberal people who are going to support Planned Parenthood. It kind of makes sense, obviously, but they get hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government, and they spend that money to vote in people at the federal level who will continue their money coming in. So that's one of the biggest problems we have. So the only way to get around it is for counties like this one, where we have a bunch of working people who, most of the people in this county have, good, solid I shouldn't say Republican values, not the party, but the values of a republic where you want a representative government. We need people like you to reach out beyond our county, to help up in Washoe County, for instance, to help in Clark County. And I'm not saying jump on a plane and go down there or drive up to Washoe, even though that would be great sometimes. But you can help with this party, you can get with our party organization here, our county party, and make phone calls during elections. We know that Douglas County is going to go red. I mean, let's face it, it's going to go red. But we need your help in other areas as well, because that's your treasury they're voting themselves a piece of.
It's been my honor and privilege for the last 14 years to be the chair of the Nevada Republican Party World Caucus. And my vice chair sitting there, my secretary sitting there. Hi, folks. One of the things in my travels across the 15 rural counties that has just perplexed me beyond belief are the folks that get angry at their candidate because of one vote or because of one statement, and instead of voting for that person in the coming election, they vote for none of the above, or they don't vote for that position. I'm here to tell you, when you cast that none of the above, you're voting for the opposition. It's the same as giving them 2 votes. Wes Duncan lost by a whisker. By a whisker. Because some people opted not to vote for him because they didn't like one commercial that was made about his opponent. And now look what we have. Please, in the future, hold your nose, bite your tongue, do what you need to do. Don't throw away your ballot. Don't throw away your vote, because it's a vote for the opposition.
As far as the state party, is concerned, we have a lot of programs that we are working on. For instance, June 22nd down in Las Vegas, they're having a candidate training school. We're going to be at the forefront of this to keep people motivated and energized. And we're going to have the Trump re-election campaign is going to be unbelievable with the technology and what you'll be able to do across the state from your own home. I promise. It'll be bigger and better than it was last year. And work with the state party. We just launched our new website, ndgop.org. Check that out. And, anything that we can do, please, in the hashtag fake news era, we have the hashtag make news like we did at the legislature, and the state party and Chairman Michael McDonald, Vice Chair Jim DeGraffenreid, we're all committed to doing what we can. So stick with us, and of course at the top of the ticket we got President Donald J. Trump. So I think we unite behind that, unite behind the America First agenda, and we can save Nevada. So thank you.
Just to follow on a little bit of that Josh had mentioned, the question has come up, are we going to concentrate on electing President Trump, or are we going to concentrate on taking back seats in the legislature in 2020?
Yes.
That's the same question.
Yes.
In fact, when we set up field offices for the president, those field offices are deliberately and specifically going to be set up in the key assembly and senate districts that we need to take back. Down in Clark County, it will happen up in Washoe County. When there's a Trump office, it's going to be in that 80-31 seat that was formerly occupied by Jill Dickman that we need to take back. There are seats that we need to defend, seats that we need to take, and there's no local or national. They are one and the same. Trump cannot win this state if we don't win those swing districts, and we need to win those swing districts if we're going to keep our state. So if anybody tells you, is it going to be Trump or is it going to be our local races? Yes. It's going to be both. So, next question. Next question on SJRA. It's a long one. It says that SJRA, for those that are not familiar with the number, is the Equal Rights Amendment that was proposed. Come to the legislature again in 2021 for approval, and then on the 2022 ballot because it is a constitutional amendment. Some looked at that bill and looked at the process and really had a problem with it because that bill was dropped with 4 days left in the session, a constitutional amendment. And so there was not a good chance to look at that bill and see exactly all of the ramifications of it. But the question reads, one aspect of the bill, tax-funded abortions, having girls compete with biological males in sports, school bathrooms and locker rooms, co-ed. The question to Senator Settlemyre was that there were a number of Republican senators who voted yes on that bill, and what was the rationale for that vote?
Sure. Let me read it to you. Basically, it's federal law. Section 24, equality of the rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by this state or any of its political subdivisions on account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. That is federal law. This is going to come to the citizens of the state of Nevada after one more vote, and the citizens of the state of Nevada can weigh in on what they want to do with that. Myself, I tend to be more libertarian in many respects. What people decide to do in their own home is their decision. You come out in the general public, get a room. Now, that being said, the concept of reading the bill, many of us sat in our caucus trying to read the words. There's nothing in here about abortion. There's nothing in here about the Hyde Amendment. There's nothing in here about letting people use the same bathroom. That's all under state law. All this says is equality under the rights, under the law, shall not be denied or abridged by the state or any of its political subdivisions on account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. I don't think we should actually try to deny people or abridge their rights based on those things. That's my opinion. But you'll have the ability to have your opinion at the election. But upon reading this, several of the colleagues of mine that are Mormon, they read their floor statements and they said, after reading my floor statement, I was going to vote no, but I don't object to this because they look at their own religion and they're worried about being discriminated against based on that, and they look at other factors. And that's basically why a lot of Republicans looked at it and decided, you know what, let's let the people decide, but on its face, there's nothing in there that's really anything you can yell about. Because again, you can't read the word abortion in there, you don't see the Hyde Amendment, you don't see using the same bathroom in any way, shape, or form, even though they're currently doing that in Washoe County. Before this ever passed, they're making bathrooms in the school district in Washoe County single sex. It's crazy.
Next question, again, fairly general one, but very important to those of us that especially saw things at the end of the session that were dropped at the last minute without any thought or planning by the majority party. How are so many bills slam dunked without sufficient education or notice of the public? It's also making a question.
It is good to be king. And we say that, it's kind of a saying around there, at least in my caucus. You have the ability, the speaker has the ability, and the majority party has the ability to change the rules or suspend the rules. We operate under Mason's rules, not Robert's rules. And basically the chairman is king and the speaker is king. So the chairman of the committees, if they suspend the rules, it takes a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules, which I gotta tell you, again, he wouldn't let them suspend the rules. He had the 2/3, he had the 1/3. But a lot of the, on our side, they had a 2/3 majority. So they suspended the rules, but they didn't have to give you the notice. They didn't have to wait 24 hours after hearing something to vote on it. And we have a 3-step process in getting a bill through our side of the house, which is read a first time to the floor, then sent to committee, read a second time, and amended if needed, then comes back 24 hours later for a vote. They can do all that in 4.5 minutes if they suspend the rules. And they did.
As we indicated, we operate under Mason's rule. Mason's law is very unique compared to Robert's Rules of Order. I've read the whole thing back to front, all 347 pages, several times, looking for loopholes, advantages, abilities to function better inside that process. But it really comes down to 2 rules. Rule number 1, chair is king. Rule number 2, refer to rule number 1. We also don't operate under the open meeting law because, well, that's too much of a problem to actually notice everybody all the time we have hearings. So we tend to run very fast and loose, especially at the end. And that's a problem. There's only one rule in that entire building that requires a 2/3 vote. And that is the suspension of the last rule that you have to wait 2 days to vote something out. And as Mr. Wheeler indicated, in his house, in the assembly, they had the advantage. They immediately changed that rule as it came closer to the end. And within 4 minutes, they could pass the bill out. We came over to our house and we said, nah, we're okay. We're not suspending the rules. And that meant a lot of bad things. Couldn't make it out. They were very upset with me about that, but oh well. I'm okay now.
All right, I have come to the end of the questions that were submitted that had to do with the legislature specifically. I don't know if it's as hot out there as it is up here, but we are getting close to the end of our time. Are there any panelists that have any final words that they want to say about anything that was not asked specifically?
I just want to say thank you again one more time, and just to remind everybody, especially when it comes to stuff like the national popular vote, these are simple conversations we can have with young people that are 18 to 30, about the difference between socialism and capitalism, because that's what 2020 I think is going to be about. So have those conversations as much as you can with as many people as you can, just so they know, because they're only hearing one side of the story, the young people. So thank you.
I just want to put one rumor to rest. Commissioner Nelson and I sit next to each other, and neither one of us has ever thrown a fist at the other one. As a matter of fact, we kind of like each other. So let me put that to rest. Even though every once in a while the arguments get heated, we are all here trying to serve our county, and we appreciate the faith that you have put into us by electing us, and we vow collectively that we will all do our best.
Speak for yourself, Wes. No, I don't take any offense at what anybody says, and I think everybody has the right to say whatever they want and take any position they want. And we all have to live our lives that way, I believe. Nobody is your enemy, they just have a different opinion. And we all are entitled to our opinions. However, we're not all entitled to a different constitution. And I think the 5th and 14th Amendments are very clear on the due process. And so when people try to pass laws that are against these constitutional rights, we absolutely have the right to say no to them. And I will continue to do that, and I think most of the people in Douglas County will continue to do that.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say thank you to the people of Douglas County. I've traveled all over the state, on other campaigns, etc. And this is definitely the most engaged, most intelligent, politically intelligent community I've ever seen. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to represent you in the state assembly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As the Senate Republican leader, I can't thank you guys enough for being there to help us, to thwart them with their bad ideas. And I need your help. We need your help as a state. This isn't about GOP. This isn't about Democrat. This isn't about independence. This is about Nevada and keeping it Nevada, not another state. We have to keep this Nevada. And the only way to do that is to reach out to your friends, it doesn't matter what party they are, and tell them what happened when it came to guns, water, education. I can't imagine anybody's happy with what happened. In that respect, they need to be angry. And if they're not angry, they're not paying attention. So please, make them pay attention. We need your help in the next election. Because the reality is if Wes Duncan would have been the AG, he would have gave us a constitutional ruling saying it was illegal and unconstitutional to pass taxes without a 2/3, and it would not have happened. But because people chose to vote for somebody else, now I have to go to court to defend the Constitution, which I'm happy to do, but I would have preferred not to. But thank you for everything you've done. Please text 474747 GOP. So just text GOP to 474747. We need your assistance. Clark County, in all reality, probably within the next month, the Republican Party will become the 3rd largest party because nonpartisans and independents are overtaking it in Clark County. Thank you.
I too would like to thank everybody for coming out. I appreciate all of your support and support for the Sheriff's Office and the deputies. We appreciate it, and we can't do our job as effectively without you and your input and your interest in what we're doing and your help. I'd also like to thank Senator Settlemeyer and Assemblyman Wheeler for their hard work and thwarting a lot of the things that could have been a lot worse. And so I really appreciate their hard work and I'm thankful for them.
I would just like to say ditto to what my fellow panelists said. I think, Mr. Wheeler, we talked about whether 2016 had the highest percentage of voters, active voters vote in Douglas County. It was 95% of active voters voted in 2016. We expect it to be that or higher, and we will be ready for you in a year.
By the way, I tout that in the assembly all the time. I say, well, you guys get a 94% come talk to me.
All right, thank you again to all of our panelists for coming out and giving us this update tonight. If anybody would like a hot dog on the road, please grab one. And anybody that can stay to help us pick up chairs, that would be appreciated as well. Thank you again and good luck.